It's Thursday. Welcome to Conscious Business Talks. Hey, Larissa, I see you. How are you, my friend? So good to have you here with me. So, today, it was something I wanted to share with you so much. So, here goes. I have been listening to a lot of different conversations with people, things that, are happening around us these days, things that are in conversation with clients, friends, family, everybody, right? Just like everybody. Hey, Matt, good to have you here as well. Anyway, one of the things that kept standing out for me was, several conversations were starting with this idea that, with the acknowledgement and awareness that we don't want to be making decisions from a place of fear, right? As entrepreneurs, oh my gosh, it's a thing. It's a daily thing to step into uncertainty. Pretty happy when you can see a clear next step, and with that leap of faith, and taking into account all the logic and support you can put around you, but still taking that leap of faith to step on to that next step, like whether you think of it as a little yellow brick road brick, just stepping onto that next brick, and then the next brick, and then the next brick, going along with that, right? It does take courage. You do need to be aware of certain things, including that, hey, where am I coming into this from? What is the intention I'm leading with? And what is the feeling that is coloring the experience that I'm having and those attached to me and interacting with me are having? So with that, there's, at least with the crowd that I hang around with, and thank you so much, I needed some milk. So anyway, the point is that I literally, right, I lost my train of thought. So it was those conversations that, at least the premise is there, the acknowledgement is there, that we don't want to be coming from a place that's primarily based out of fear. And we want to make decisions based on where we want to go, and what the inner compass, that central core part of us that tells us when we are in alignment with our purpose, with our values, with where we want to be, the experience that we want to have, the legacy we want to leave, that alignment feels a certain way when we really are in line with that, right? So at least the acknowledgement is there. But the funny thing is that a couple of different experiences just in the last couple of days that happened on the weekend and then right after the weekend, that I was like, wow, it's kind of funny that sometimes we're so afraid of something and not being in it, or we're so committed to not being in that we actually start to fear the very thing we're committed to not experiencing, or even if we're experiencing, not to stay in it, right? And in this particular case, it was literally fear. One conversation was on the personal level, where a friend of mine called, and so just about every third or fourth sentence started with, well, you don't want to live in fear, but, right? And all of the conversation, however, was so fear-based that I was literally like, okay, so we don't want to live in fear, but we are experiencing, in this particular conversation anyways, my experience of what you may be experiencing and what you're sharing with me is literally centered around fear. Everything you're saying is so steeped in fear and worry and anxiety of a future that, sure, we can put certain things around it, and we can be concerned about certain trends that may be taking place, but that does not make a very certain set in stone future. multiple possibilities arise of everything that we may very well be stepping in. What may unfold from that, I don't know. I have no idea. I may have no idea until I step into it. So me being so focused on that unknown future does not serve me, right? And me making decisions based on that anxiety and fear while saying, but we don't want to make decisions out of fear, but it's almost like I'm afraid of fear itself. It kind of defeats the purpose, at least to my way of thinking. Let me see what you're thinking. So, hello. I love when you go onto YouTube, because then I know somebody's giving me some love over there, because most of the time I forget. I confess. That's a place that I got to invest a little bit of time, attention, and love in. And Larissa says the fear sits in our subconscious level. It does. It does. But when you bring it to the conscious, when it rises to the surface enough that we are acknowledging that there is a part of us that is feeling that fear or experiencing it, then we have a choice at that point, right? As to bring into awareness what is real and what is the made-up future that we are anticipating without really knowing if it is going to come to pass. What I am certain of in the moment is now. And yes, that does not mean that as a human, whether in my personal life, excuse me, or in my professional business life, I ignore what else is happening around me. But what I can bank on is what's around me right now, what I know to have, where I have stepped, what I have stepped through to get to here now, and where I may be going, but where I want to go, that I know, right? What else is happening, especially when I'm so worried about that unknown future, at least for me, I find that it just seems to suck a lot of that independent, creative thinking, and that space that I like to have around me, where I can make like pretty cool decisions, come up with nice ideas, and see what the amazing humans that I'm in touch with, what are we bringing to the fore right now. So, and it is so hard to access if we don't develop deep self-awareness. Absolutely. And I find that is a constant, continuous process. It's not that I can say, hey, today I have developed it, and then let go of it, assuming that it is forever, right? It is a continuing touch point. And when I find that I step away from it, to kind of come back to center and say, okay, this feels right. This feels like it's in alignment with who I am, where I want to be, how I want to show up in this world today, what I believe is my reason for being here, right? And Larissa, we fearing to go deeper and discover that part of ourselves. Yes, I believe that is true. And I don't even know sometimes, at least for me, what I find is that sometimes I am allowing the busyness to take that space where I have that space to actually make the time to learn that and get to know that part of me, answer the questions for myself and for my business that really bear looking at and getting answered, because they require thought and they require actually mind to be involved with thought and consciousness to start to permeate what mind and thought are pointing me to, if that makes sense. So, oh, this is lovely. Simply being honest to ourselves and acknowledging we are in fear helps to bring you to the now. And yes, it is a process that never stops, right? But that's the beauty of that, right? The second thing that the conversation that got me to think about it even more deeply was this conversation I had with a service provider. We were, like I mentioned to you, we were shopping for roofs. And I don't tend to look at things on a transactional level. Whenever I am looking for something, to me, it's an investment in a relationship. I don't just go and, say, hey, what's the cheapest price? I just want to do this and move on, right? For me, it's like, okay, who are the people behind, the company, the face of this organization that I'm looking at that are providing the service, right? Who are the people? What are their values? How do they operate? What do they believe in? How do they show up? What is it that's important to them? Is there something in my world that if they are aligned with how I see the world, how we as human beings, as connected beings, how we can support and benefit each other, like especially the ones that we kind of say, oh, they're points of resonance. I can feel the synergy in this, right? I can see this thing going somewhere. You guys are so awesome at what you do. Let me support you. Let me introduce you to other people who may be looking for the same, kind of service. That's just how, for me, that's such a bigger umbrella. It actually excites me, right? Getting to know, did I find somebody else who's super cool to have in my world, right? It's kind of, so a creepier way of looking at it is, and I've said this before, I collect awesome people, right? So anyway, I had been interviewing a bunch of different companies, and a couple of them really stood out. So I was like, okay, out of those people, I wasn't able to hear from one of them, and this other person really stood out. When I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, I want to get to know you better. So we actually ended up spending a few hours on Sunday getting to know this company, getting to know what they stood for, what the owner was like, what was, amazing about the way the team interacted. How did they do business? How did they treat each other? Like, the kind of things that, I know it's kind of weird. Like, I do that. It's important for me to know the people behind the label, right? But it's an investment of time, because I could have it like done in minutes. Instead, it took a few hours. By the time we ended up looking at it for not just one thing, but for another. Anyway, long story short, it was an investment of time. And as you guys know, time these days is kind of sometimes in short supply for me. So this was an important investment of time for me. And I'm sure it was for them as well. But definitely, I did not treat it lightly. And it was kind of funny where I was, as we wrapped up, we thought, we signed the contracts, things were a go. But I could feel a disconnect as that person was leaving. And I knew that it was because I was talking about solar panels, I was talking about some other service things, and what had not gone right in another time. Excuse me. And I think that person came up with an understanding or a story around it that got them to worry about a particular version of the future that didn't exist. And in fact, if they had gotten to know the people on this side of the relationship, i.e. us, then they would have also got to know what a rich collaborative, powerful relationship this could be for them as well, right? But there is, oh, who said this the other day? I got to look this up and I'll post who it was. But it was really that reality is often kinder than the future we make up, right? Or the imagination or the anxiety led thought that we have. And I could feel the disconnect, that this person isn't where we started. And I wonder where, what's going on. And sure enough, it was like they were waiting to have the slightest excuse to back out from that, right? To protect, to be safe from. And the fear I heard in their voice and the anxiety that was based on nothing except a text that was exchanged. And I'm thinking, wow, you're thinking about starting a relationship, which is quite a few $1,000s investment on my part, and time and labor on your part, and possible amazing conscious collaborations that could be in store. But you're basing your decision on a text which does not communicate tone. It cannot communicate intent. It doesn't even communicate what space that person was who texted, whether they were talking to somebody else as they were texting you, or they were preoccupied with something else and kind of half thinking about what they were texting. But instead of picking up a phone and saying, hey, this doesn't make a lot of sense, I want to know more, you would allow your fear about what could be to overtake that and make you so uncomfortable that that whole collaborative process collapses. And, the cool thing with that is that, there's always a silver lining behind things. So it's better to find that out at the beginning of a particular relationship and the foundations you're laying than afterwards, when there's a lot more investment that has already taken place, right? There's a lot more investment into the dreams and the ideas and the thoughts and work that may already have taken place. But it was just, the sad part of it for me was, as I mentioned on one of the talks that we did about conscious collaboration, the sad part of it for me was that reality was the part that was taken out of the equation, and instead anxiety about a reality possibly, or a future that hadn't come to be yet, was the primary basis of decision making. And I got to thinking, wow, okay, so as a business owner, when you start to either fear itself, or you allow uncertainty and doubt to creep in and distort reality, and you do not give yourself the space, and you do not do yourself the favor of fact checking, research, and investment to see, is this real? Then not only do you sacrifice revenue, you also sacrifice the potential of what that relationship could bring to you. And that's a pity, because the richness of that is lost, right? What could be doesn't come to pass. And a reality that is infinitely kinder than the anxiety-led thought that points to a future that may not even exist if you invest the time in looking to see, hey, am I looking at this right? And frankly speaking, if nothing else, why in the world would you ever make a business decision based on either a text or an email or any kind of an exchange that leaves out so much of the nuances of what makes us the communication part of us humans, right? Like, that's a lesson I learned a very long time ago. So both of those things, that personal conversation and that business conversation got me thinking about how many times do we get caught up in either the fear of fear itself, right? Or fear of a future that doesn't exist, especially when we don't make time to fact check in the present, right? And at the same time, what it did do, like, I could have sat there and argued and tried to convince. For what purpose? You can't force anybody to a table for collaboration. You either believe and you commit, you take responsibility, and you show up powerfully for your end of it, investing in a future that's important to both parties. That's how a conscious collaboration works, right? And frankly, any collaborative process, whether you bring conscious awareness into it or not, most of the time it fails when we forget that part, that it's not just about one party or one side of things. It's literally about both of the parties, or if they're more than that, more than two, everybody invested in a common goal that serves the benefit of everybody involved, right? So that to me, it was kind of cool, because it opened up the conversation with the other party, and frankly, it's a better fit anyway. But it wouldn't have come to pass if the first party had not literally broken the basic tenets of what would be a great business relationship, right? What makes a great business relationship? What are the pillars, the foundations that you're going to set that relationship on? Are you going to allow the basic, things? And maybe sometimes, we think there is so much business coming in that I don't care. I have enough coming in. If not this, then that. Okay. But it's not just that. There may be tons of business coming in, but then you're reducing it purely to the transactional. That means that in this particular, so we're talking roofs, right? So in this particular case, you do one roof, then you do another roof. Maybe they refer you, maybe they don't. Who cares? You keep on going, right? And you're always looking for new customers. Whereas if that is looked at as a collaborative process, then you have customers for life who become your ambassadors. They bring business to you. It's a rich relationship which serves both parties. Peace of mind and knowing that the company that I'm dealing with is standing behind their work. They're there if something goes wrong. And if something goes wrong, I'm not finger pointing and blame laying. I'm looking for the other side of that relationship, of that whole service, and saying, hey, this isn't working. Let's figure this out. Can you give me a hand? Let's figure out why this is happening. This is broken. Let's fix it. Right? Anyway, this was, it was such a pleasure to talk to you on this. And Larissa, I have to see this. I think we did this one. And, you have to go. No worries. I'm wrapping up. And it was such a pleasure to have you here with me today. Mull this over. And if you believe this benefits somebody, share it with them, please. Because certain thoughts spark other thoughts. And I'm always open to what the thoughts that we are exchanging right now, what they spark in not just you, but somebody else that you think of as you hear them. So have a fantastic rest of the day, rest of the evening, rest of the afternoon, wherever you are. And we will see you here next Thursday at 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific Time, 6:30 Mountain Time, and in Australia, 10:30 a.m. Friday, Brisbane time. Share this with everybody or anybody that you like. Love having you here. Mwah!